They told everyone we were one happy family on a winter vacation. That's the line my daughter rehearsed on the flight to Colorado, right between sips of overpriced champagne. I sat there, staring at the frosted window, already wondering why my stomach felt heavy. Something was off. I could smell it. When we pulled into Aspen, the mountains glowed white under the last hint of daylight, the kind of postcard view people brag about on Christmas cards. The rental house stood tall and proud, with polished beams and wide windows spilling golden light onto the snow. From the outside, it looked warm, inviting, a dream. But I should have known better. Dreams for them meant nightmares for me. Inside, laughter echoed as bags dropped on the polished wood floor. Boots stomped, scarves flew, voices bounced. They scattered to pick their rooms like vultures circling a carcass. I trailed behind, carrying my own bag, too proud to ask for help, too aware that no one would offer. "Mom, we thought maybe you'd be more comfortable here," my daughter said sweetly, pushing open a side door. The room wasn't a room at all. It was the garage. Cold bit at my cheeks instantly. The concrete floor was bare, the smell of motor oil clung to the air, and the only light came from a dim bulb overhead that flickered like it had stage fright. A thin cot sat in the corner, covered with a scratchy blanket that looked borrowed from a scout camp. I laughed. "Short, sharp, bitter, comfortable," I repeated. "Sure, like a dog bed's comfortable." She smiled as if I'd just agreed and closed the door behind me. That was the first moment I realized I wasn't part of this trip. I was cargo. Night fell heavy over Aspen, and the cold slipped under the doorframe like a thief. I curled on the cot, breath fogging in front of me. My fingers stiffened. My stomach growled. The only sound came from upstairs. Glasses clinking, fire crackling, music swelling. I imagined them around the fireplace, cheeks flushed, plates heavy with food. I pressed my hands tighter around my body, shivering at the irony. My own family enjoying warmth while I froze 6 feet below them. Every so often, a laugh would explode through the vents, loud, careless, cruel, each one stabbed deeper. Funny, I thought. They'll tell their friends how generous they are, bringing old grandma along. What a joke. They brought me here to bury me under snow without digging a hole. At midnight, I heard the garage door rattle from the wind. The draft swept in harder. I pulled the blanket up, but it was thin as paper. My lips cracked. My joints ached. My mind wandered to dark places. Is this how it ends? Alone, in a garage, while my grandchildren drink cocoa upstairs? The second day, my body screamed for warmth. I shuffled out, only to be greeted with pitying glances. "Cold down there." My grandson smirked, holding a steaming mug of coffee. The smell nearly broke me. I said nothing. Silence is sharper than words. When they left for the slopes, their laughter trailing like a parade, I stood by the window and watched. Bright jackets flashing against white snow, skis slicing clean lines, the sky blue as porcelain. A picture of joy, with one piece missing. Me. I pressed my hand to the glass. The warmth from inside didn't reach me. That night, my strength gave out. The cold seeped deeper, a weight pressing on my chest. My breath came shallow, each exhale a puff of white against the dark. My hands shook uncontrollably. My heart slowed. A strange thought struck me. Sharp, absurd, terrifying. Maybe this is exactly what they wanted. I closed my eyes, thinking of the house back in Ohio, the framed photos no one looked at anymore, the years I spent stitching together a family that now left me in a garage. And then, black. The sound of sirens split the silence. When I opened my eyes again, lights flashed red against the snow outside. Shadows moved quickly, voices urgent. A paramedic's hand pressed against my wrist. "She's hypothermic. Get her on the stretcher, now." I drifted in and out as they wheeled me out of the garage. The cold air outside felt warmer than the garage I'd just left. Through blurred vision, I caught sight of them. My family standing at the doorway, faces pale, eyes wide, but not from worry, From fear. Fear of being exposed. Fear of neighbors whispering. I wanted to laugh, but my lips wouldn't move. Instead, I let my eyes linger on them, just long enough to plant a thought they couldn't shake. I saw you. I know what you did. The ambulance doors slammed shut, and that's when I realized this story wasn't ending here. It was just beginning. The first thing I heard was the beep. Slow, steady, unforgiving. My eyelids were heavy, but the sound pulled me up from the dark. The ceiling above me was white, sterile. A hospital. Tubes in my arms, blankets up to my chin. Warmth. Real warmth. I'd nearly forgotten what it felt like. For a moment, I thought maybe it had all been a nightmare. The garage. The cold. The laughter above me. But then my eyes slid to the side, and I saw the frost still clinging to the corner of the window. Aspen. It hadn't been a dream at all. When the nurse leaned over me, her smile was kind but cautious. "You're lucky, ma'am." Another few hours, and she didn't finish. She didn't have to. I whispered, my voice cracked and dry. "Family. They're in the waiting room," she said almost apologetically. "Would you like me to bring them in?" I closed my eyes. My first instinct was to nod, but something inside me stopped cold. Did I really want to see them, after what they'd done? Still, I forced a smile thin as glass. "Sure, bring them in." They filed in minutes later, faces rehearsed into masks of concern. My daughter dabbed at her eyes with a tissue that stayed suspiciously dry. My son-in-law patted my hand like he was greeting a stranger on the street. The grandchildren hovered at the back, more interested in the buzzing soda machine in the hall. "Mom," my daughter said softly, "we were so worried." We didn't know the garage would get that cold at night. It was just temporary, you know? Temporary. The words slid through my mind like ice water. I studied their faces, not one flicker of shame, just fear that someone might have noticed. My lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. "Don't worry," I rasped. "I survived." Her eyes darted to the machines around me, then back down. She didn't answer. Later that night, when the hallway had quieted, a shadow appeared at the doorway. A man, older, with silver hair and a doctor's coat. He paused, squinting at me, and then broke into a grin. Joe. I blinked. My throat tightened. Frank Wilson, high school biology, the boy who once slipped notes into my locker, folded into perfect squares. Decades later, he stood here, the same sharp blue eyes, though lined with time. "Well, I'll be," he said, stepping closer. "I thought it was you. I read the name on the chart. Haven't seen you since, 1964. His laugh was warm, but it caught when he looked closer. "What happened to you?" I wanted to brush it off, say it was just an accident, but the truth sat heavy on my chest. My lips trembled, and before I knew it, the words spilled out. "They put me in a garage, Frank. My own family." He froze, his jaw tightened, and then his voice dropped, low, steady. "Joe, you can't let that stand." That night, I lay awake, listening to the rhythmic hiss of the oxygen. His words echoed louder than the machine. "You can't let that stand." Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Laughing, sipping wine, posting their perfect ski trip photos while I froze inches from death. My grandchildren, cheeks flushed from cocoa, never once asking, "Where's Grandma?" Humiliation washed over me, hot and cold at the same time. I remembered every small slight over the years. The ignored phone calls, the forgotten birthdays, the way they looked past me at holidays as if I were already fading into the wallpaper. And now, the garage. I whispered into the dark, my voice so soft it barely left my lips. Never again. The next morning, Frank came by during rounds. He closed the curtain around the bed, lowered his voice. "Joe, I've got a friend. Lawyer. Good one. You need someone on your side, because trust me, they'll spin this. They'll make you out to be the burden. They'll say you wandered down there yourself." The thought made my stomach twist. I knew he was right. My family were experts at rewriting stories, especially when money was involved. "Give me his name," I said. My voice didn't tremble this time. He slipped a card into my palm. The edges were sharp, the ink bold. Just holding it gave me a strange sense of strength, as if I'd finally found a weapon in a house full of thieves. But when my daughter returned that afternoon, the performance began again. She sat too close, her perfume sharp, her smile thinner than glass. "Mom," she whispered, "let's not talk about this to anyone. The garage. It'll only embarrass the family. People wouldn't understand." Her words dripped with honey, but underneath, I heard the venom. Embarrass the family, not nearly freeze her own mother, not leave her with blue lips and stiff fingers. No, the only concern was reputation. I tilted my head, studying her. People wouldn't understand. Exactly. She smiled, relieved. I smiled back, sarcastic, bitter, cold. "Oh, don't worry. They'll understand perfectly." For the first time, I saw a flicker of unease in her eyes, a crack in the mask. That night, I hid the card under my pillow, tracing the name in the dark with my fingertips. Each letter felt like a step forward, a promise. The humiliation had burned into something else now. Not weakness, not despair, something sharper, stronger. Revenge doesn't come in a roar, it starts as a whisper. And mine had just begun. I closed my eyes, letting the thought warm me better than any blanket. They thought the garage would break me. They thought wrong. The next morning, the nurse came to check my vitals, cheerful as ever. But as she turned to leave, she paused, frowning. "Funny," she said, glancing at the bedside table. "There was food ordered for you last night. It never arrived. Must have been misplaced." Misplaced. In a hospital. My blood chilled. My eyes flicked to the doorway where one of my grandsons leaned casually against the wall, scrolling on his phone. His smirk said everything. The cold realization hit me. They weren't finished. The hospital food never did show up that night. I asked the nurse the next morning, and she frowned, scrolling through her tablet. Strange. "It's logged as delivered." I didn't answer. My eyes drifted again to the hallway. My grandson leaned there, just like before, grinning at his phone, too casual, too comfortable. That's when I realized the garage wasn't a mistake. The missing food wasn't a mistake. None of it was. By the third day, my strength returned, but my patience had worn thin. I'd spent a lifetime being the afterthought, the easy target, the old woman they assumed would never push back. They forgot one thing. Survival sharpens you. I'd been sharpening for a long time. Frank stopped by again, slipping another quiet word of encouragement. "Joe, don't let them set the narrative. Call him, the lawyer, before they twist this into something it wasn't." I nodded, and when the nurse handed me the hospital phone, my hands didn't shake. Not once. "Mr. Harris." My voice was hoarse but steady. "Frank Wilson gave me your name. I need help. Family help." He didn't ask for details, just said, "I'll be there tomorrow." That night, I played the part of fragile grandmother. I let my daughter hover, let her fluff my pillow, let her tell the nurses how much she cared. I kept my face soft, my voice weak. Inside, I was already planning the strike. Every good fight begins with camouflage. The next morning, Harris arrived. Tall, sharp suit, eyes like flint. He shook my hand, then leaned close so only I could hear. "I know what they did." "Don't say another word in front of them. Just nod along." And so I did. When my family swept into the room, he was already there, posing as a family friend visiting me. He stood by the window, silent, while they rattled on about how quickly they'd acted to save me, how it was all just a misunderstanding. I smiled, weakly, of course, let them believe it. But when they left, Harris sat down, pen ready. "Do you trust me?" he asked. I thought of the garage, the smirk on my grandson's face, the missing tray of food. "Yes," I said. "I trust you more than I trust them." That afternoon, the first strike began. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was surgical. Harris made a few calls, quiet ones. By evening, a freeze was placed on one of the joint accounts my daughter used for family expenses. The same account I'd built over years, the same money they tapped for ski trips and new cars. By dinner time, their cards began bouncing. I didn't need to see it. I could imagine it perfectly. My daughter at the cafe counter, credit card swiped, machine blinking red. My son-in-law fumbling with his wallet, voice rising. My grandchildren watching, embarrassed, confused. The glow of the fire in the background of their perfect vacation photo, while reality slipped its claws into their pockets. I sat in my hospital bed, smiling faintly as I sipped lukewarm tea. First blood. But here's the part that really satisfied me. They didn't know it was me. Not yet. That evening, my daughter stormed into the room, cheeks flushed from more than just cold air. "Mom, have you touched something? The bank's having issues." I blinked, innocent. Bank issues. In Aspen? How shocking. Her eyes narrowed. For the first time, I saw it. Suspicion. A crack in the confidence. The days blurred, but the tension only sharpened. Harris came daily, each time leaving with more papers, more signatures, more quiet reassurances. "This is only the beginning, Joe," he told me once, slipping documents back into his briefcase. "We'll make sure they never see it coming." And oh, how I savored that thought. But then, just as my confidence swelled, another detail cut through. A nurse whispered it when no one was around. "Your family's been asking questions about your discharge papers." Pressing, actually. Too pressing. Almost like they don't want you to go home. I stiffened. Home. They weren't planning to take me back to Ohio. They weren't planning to take me anywhere. Something colder than Aspen snow ran down my spine. I lay there that night. The hiss of the oxygen louder than ever, the card still tucked under my pillow. My first strike had landed, but it also lit a fire under them. And if I wasn't careful, they'd strike back harder. Snow fell heavy against the hospital window, each flake lit by the harsh glow of the street lamps. I lay there staring at it, listening to the steady beep of the monitor. It was almost peaceful. Almost. But peace never lasts long when greed is breathing down the hallway. They arrived the next morning in a tight formation, my daughter leading like a general. Smiles plastered on their faces, voices too sweet. "Mom, we've been talking," she began, settling into the chair at my bedside. "We think it's best if, once you're discharged, you come stay with us. At least until you're fully recovered." The way she said it, all syrup and warmth, would have fooled a stranger. But I knew better. She wasn't inviting me in. She was corralling me. I leaned back against the pillows, folding my hands neatly. "Stay with you," I echoed. "In the house with the 3 barking dogs and the leaky roof." How thoughtful. Her smile flickered, just for a second. My son-in-law cleared his throat. "It'll be safer for you." Hospitals make mistakes, you know. Paperwork goes missing. Best if we handle things. There it was, the mask slipping. When they finally left, Harris appeared carrying a folder thick with papers. He laid them out on the bed, one after another, the edges brushing against my blanket. Advance directive. Power of attorney. Adjustments to the will. All in motion, he said briskly. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet fire. "By the time you leave this hospital, Joe, your family won't recognize the ground they're standing on." I traced a finger over the papers. My reflection glared back from the glossy surface. For the first time in years, I felt armed. Later that day, I caught my grandson peeking into the room. He wasn't smiling this time. His phone stayed in his pocket. His eyes slid to the stack of papers on the table. Our gazes locked. His face hardened. I smiled at him. Slow, deliberate, sharp. He blinked, then turned on his heel. That night, Harris sat with me longer than usual. Snow kept piling outside, smothering the roads, muffling the city. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and the lemon polish they used on the floors. "They'll fight dirty," Harris warned. "They already tried with the garage, the food. Now it'll be legal. They'll claim you're not competent. They'll try to get a guardianship order. I've seen it before." His words landed heavy. Competence. Guardianship. Those weren't just words, they were shackles. I clenched my jaw. Let them try. The next morning, my daughter returned, this time with a clipboard. She perched at my bedside, shuffling the papers like a nervous secretary. "Mom," she began carefully, "the hospital needs signatures. Just routine. Insurance, post-care instructions, you know how it is." She slid the pen toward me. I looked down. The top page was simple enough, but underneath I caught a glimpse of something else. Legal wording, guardianship petition, my name, her signature line. I met her eyes. Insurance forms. She hesitated, just a breath, but it was enough. I pushed the clipboard back across the table. "You sign it then, since you know what it says." Her smile cracked. That evening, Harris practically hissed when I told him. "They're getting desperate." Good. Desperation makes people sloppy. He opened his briefcase, the brass latch snapping like a gunshot. Papers spilled across the bed, maps of my next moves. Outside, the snowstorm thickened, burying Aspen in silence. Inside, the storm was only beginning. But then, the twist. A nurse slipped in after midnight, eyes darting nervously to the hall. She whispered so low I had to strain to hear. "Your family asked me about moving you. Said they had arrangements with another facility, out of town. They've been pushing hard, too hard." My chest tightened. Another facility, out of town. No hospital oversight, no lawyer access, just me, cornered again. I gripped the bedrail, cold metal against colder skin. They weren't giving up. They were escalating, and if I didn't strike harder, soon, I'd vanish into some facility and never see daylight again. The storm broke the next morning. I woke to silence, heavy and strange. The snow had stopped, leaving everything outside the window buried in a white hush. Cars sat half-swallowed, rooftops sagged. Aspen looked like a painting, untouched. But inside, it was anything but untouched. They came in as a pack again, brushing snow from their coats, boots squeaking against the polished floor. My daughter's smile was wider now, too wide. She carried a folder this time. "Mom," she began, her voice honey-sweet, "the hospital's agreed to discharge you. We've arranged everything. Transportation, care, even a new place for you to stay. You'll be comfortable." Comfortable. That word again. My jaw tightened. Before I could answer, Harris stepped into the room. His timing was surgical. He closed the door behind him, snow still clinging to his shoulders. "Good morning," he said, his voice smooth but edged with steel. "I'm here as Mrs. Taylor's counsel." My daughter froze. The smile slipped. "Counsel?" she repeated. "Yes," Harris said flatly, snapping his briefcase open and setting it on the side table. "I represent her interests. And unless you're her nurse, you don't belong in this room right now." They weren't prepared for that. I watched the color drain from her face. For once, she had no script. She stammered something about family rights, about looking out for me. Harris didn't flinch. "Rights. You lost those when you left her in a freezing garage. I've already filed a petition for full control of her estate. On her terms. You won't be touching a dime without her consent." The silence that followed was sweeter than any music. When they stormed out, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My hands shook, not from weakness, but from the surge of power. For the first time, I wasn't on their leash. Harris leaned in, lowering his voice. "That was the second strike, Joe. You've boxed them in. Now they'll flail. And when people flail, they fall." Later that day, I was wheeled to a meeting room. Neutral walls, fluorescent lights, a table that smelled faintly of bleach. It felt more like a courtroom than a hospital wing. Across from me sat my daughter, her lawyer, and my son-in-law. Papers spread between us like weapons. My family smiled, thin, brittle, desperate. "Mom," my daughter began, "we only want what's best for you. This lawyer you've brought in, he's confusing things. You've been ill, weak. You're not in a state to be making serious decisions." Her words hung in the air like a trap. I leaned forward, my voice cold and clipped. "I may be weak, but I'm not blind, and I'm not stupid." I let them talk, spinning their webs, filling the air with half-truths. But when they finished, I reached into my blanket and pulled out the card Frank had given me. I held it up between two fingers. "Do you know what this is?" I asked. My daughter frowned. "A card." "Yes," I said, smiling thinly. "The kind of card you get when people in this town know each other. The kind of card that leads to witnesses, doctors, nurses, friends." Their lawyer shifted in his chair. My daughter's face paled. "Try to drag me off to one of your facilities," I said softly. "See how fast the story makes the rounds in Aspen. Family leaves old woman to freeze in garage. I wonder how that'll sound over cocktails at your ski lodge." The silence afterward was thick, hot, electric. I'd found the crack and pushed. They left without another word, their coats still dripping melted snow on the sterile floor. That night, I slept better. Not because I was safe, far from it, but because I'd landed my blow. They couldn't erase the humiliation I'd carved into them in that room, but comfort doesn't last long. At dawn, a nurse woke me, whispering urgently, "Mrs. Taylor, there's something you should know. Your daughter's been asking about the Aspen rental house, ownership details, title records. She's been very persistent." My heart stopped cold. The house, the one they'd rented for their perfect vacation. They weren't finished. They were aiming bigger now. When Harris arrived, I told him everything. He listened, face grim, then pulled another folder from his case. "Then we'll hit back harder. If they want the house, we'll give them the house." His eyes gleamed. I frowned. "What does that mean?" He leaned close. "It means by the time they realize what's happening, the deed won't be theirs to chase. It'll be yours." The snow outside had begun to melt, dripping from the edges of the roof like glass beads. The storm had passed. But inside, the battle was just beginning to sharpen, and I had the strangest feeling. The next move would change everything. The storm left Aspen glittering, like diamonds spilled across the mountains. By the time I was discharged, the town had already swept its sidewalks, cleared its streets, returned to its postcard charm. But for me, nothing felt charming. The ambulance ride from the hospital was short, too short. We passed chalets glowing like lanterns, families laughing through frosted windows, smoke curling from chimneys. I sat stiffly, watching the scenery blur, until the vehicle slowed in front of the house, their house, the one they rented for their perfect family trip. And soon, maybe, mine. Harris helped me inside. My cane tapped against the polished wood floor, echoing louder than the voices in the living room. My family was already gathered there, clustered around the fireplace. The flames threw long shadows across their faces. For a moment, I thought they looked like strangers. My daughter stood first, smile frozen tight. "Mom, you're home. Home." I let the word hang. Then I glanced at the garage door, still shut, its handle glinting in the firelight. My stomach turned. "Lovely," I said flatly. "Feels just like it did last time." Her smile faltered. That night, Harris spread documents across the dining table, papers fanned like a deck of cards, each one a piece of the trap we were laying. The table's surface gleamed under the chandelier, my reflection fractured by black ink and signatures. "This is the plan," Harris said. "The owners of this rental are in a bit of financial trouble. They're open to negotiation. With the right filing, the property can be transferred quietly. It won't just be a vacation home anymore. It'll be yours." I stared at the stack of contracts. My heart pounded. To stay here, in Aspen, In the very house they shoved me into a garage. It was poetic. "Do it," I said. My voice didn't waver, but victory never comes uncontested. The next morning, I overheard whispers. My daughter, my son-in-law, voices sharp and frantic behind the closed kitchen door. "She's planning something." I saw those papers on the table. "You think I didn't notice? She's got that lawyer twisting things. We have to act now." Then we hit her where it hurts. The will, the accounts, everything. I froze, leaning against the wall, listening. Their words were daggers. When I stepped into the room, they shut up instantly, smiles plastered on like masks. My son-in-law raised his mug, steam curling up in front of his face. "Coffee, Mom." "Warm you up." I smiled back. "No thanks. I know what warmth tastes like." His hand tightened on the cup. That afternoon, Harris left to meet with the property owners. He walked out into the thin winter sun, his breath rising in white clouds. I stayed behind, cane in hand, moving slowly through the house. I paused at the garage door, fingers brushing the cold metal handle. A shiver climbed up my spine, not from the draft, from the memory. "This place tried to bury me," I whispered. "Let's see how it feels when I bury them instead." By evening, the house grew restless. My grandchildren sulked, their ski passes crumpled on the counter. My daughter paced, phone pressed to her ear, whispering furiously. The fire crackled too loudly, as if it knew the tension swelling in the room. When Harris returned, snow dusting his coat, he closed the door firmly behind him. His eyes met mine, steady and sharp. "It's done," he said. "The papers are signed. The transfer's in motion. By the end of the week, this house won't belong to anyone but you." A thrill shot through me. I could almost hear chains snapping, but the triumph lasted minutes. That same night, while Harris reviewed the papers upstairs, I caught sight of my grandson slipping out the front door, coat half-zipped, phone clenched in his hand. Curiosity gnawed at me. I waited a beat, then followed, cane tapping softly against the porch. The air outside was bitter, slicing against my cheeks. Snow crunched under his boots as he rounded the corner of the house. I stayed in the shadow, watching. He stopped by the car, phone pressed to his ear. His words drifted through the icy air. "Yeah, I saw the lawyer. Papers everywhere. She's signing things. If we don't move fast, we'll lose it all. No, don't worry. I've got a plan." My grip tightened on the cane. A plan. I stepped back before he could see me, my heart pounding. Inside, the warmth of the fire mocked me. I sat at the edge of the couch, staring at the flames licking the logs, feeling them burn hotter than my anger. For the first time since this war began, I felt it. They were going to make their move soon, and if I wasn't ready, I'd lose everything. The next morning, the knock came. Sharp, hard, insistent. When Harris opened the door, 2 men in suits stood there, clipboards, stern faces. Their eyes swept the room like searchlights. "Court order," one said, holding out the papers. "We need to speak with Mrs. Taylor immediately." The fire crackled. My family leaned in, smiling behind their fake concern. And just like that, I realized the counterattack had arrived. The men in suits stood in the doorway, snow dripping from their shoes, papers clutched like weapons. My daughter hovered behind them, her face a portrait of false concern. "Mrs. Taylor," one of the men said, voice clipped, "we're here under a temporary guardianship petition. We need to assess your condition. Standard procedure." I didn't answer. I simply lifted my chin, my eyes drifting past them to Harris. He stepped forward, calm as ever, brushing snow from his coat. "Gentlemen," he said smoothly, "this is my client. She will not be speaking to you without me present. Now, if you'd like to review your paperwork, I'd suggest you start with the signature page. I think you'll find something missing." They glanced down. One frowned. "This isn't signed by a judge," Harris finished for him, his voice sharp as glass. "It's a petition, not an order, which means you're here on thin ice, and in Aspen, thin ice doesn't last long." My daughter's smile cracked. My son-in-law shifted, his hand tightening on the back of a chair. The grandchildren peeked from the stairs, wide-eyed, sensing the show unraveling. I almost pitied them. Almost. That night, the house felt like a cage. Snow tracked across the polished floor from where the men had stood. The fire burned low, embers glowing red like watchful eyes. My family avoided me, huddling in corners, whispering furiously. Every whisper was a confession. Every glance was a weapon. I sat in the armchair, blanket draped over my lap, Kane resting by my side. I looked every bit the fragile grandmother they wanted me to be. But inside, I was steel. The next morning, Harris arrived with a different kind of document. He laid it on the dining table, the paper heavy, the seal gleaming under the light. "This," he said, tapping the page, "is the deed transfer. Filed, stamped, recorded. As of now, this property belongs to you, Joe." The words hit me like a wave. I stared at the page, at my name etched in bold ink, and for the first time in weeks, I felt the weight shift. Not their house, not their control, mine. I wanted to savor it, but my daughter didn't give me the chance. She slammed her phone on the table, eyes blazing. "You think this changes anything? You think one piece of paper makes you invincible? We'll contest it. We'll bury you in court. We'll make you look senile, unstable. No one will believe your story." Her voice cracked with rage, her mask finally gone. I leaned forward, my smile cold. "Then I guess we'll see who believes what when the photos surface. You remember, don't you? Neighbors saw the ambulance, saw them wheel me out of the garage. That image doesn't fade." Her mouth snapped shut. Harris's lips twitched into the faintest smirk. The next blow didn't come from her. It came from the grandson. That evening, I found him standing in the kitchen, phone in hand, whispering to someone. He froze when he saw me, then plastered on a grin. "Just ordering pizza, Grandma," he said too quickly. I stepped closer, my cane tapping against the tile. "Funny," I said. "I didn't hear the word pizza once." His grin faltered. He slipped past me, muttering, and disappeared upstairs. I stared at the dark screen of the microwave, my reflection staring back. My pulse quickened. They weren't done. Not yet. By midnight, the house boiled over. Voices erupted upstairs, shouting, slamming doors, accusations flying. I heard my daughter cry out, "She's ruining everything," followed by my son-in-law's growl, "Then we take it back." I sat in the armchair downstairs, calm, watching the flames die in the fireplace. The wood hissed, a final pop echoing through the silence. I whispered to the fire, "Try me." The next morning, Harris arrived early. Too early. He looked grim. "They've filed an emergency motion," he said, setting down his briefcase. "They're trying to invalidate the deed transfer." "Court hearing tomorrow. Aspen Courthouse. They're throwing everything they have at you." I nodded slowly. My hands tightened on the cane. Tomorrow. For weeks, I'd been playing defense, striking carefully, step by step. But tomorrow, everything would be dragged into the open. Their lies, my survival, the garage, and I had only one chance to end this war. The snow outside began falling again, heavy, relentless. I stood at the window, watching the flakes blur into white. My reflection stared back, not the frail woman they shoved in a garage, but something sharper, harder. This wasn't survival anymore. This was the final battle. The courthouse in Aspen was smaller than I expected. A square stone building tucked between boutiques selling fur coats and ski gear. Its steps swept clean of snow. The morning sun spilled through the tall windows, painting long lines across the marble floor. I gripped my cane tighter as Harris guided me inside. My family was already there, clustered like nervous actors before a show. My daughter's lips pressed into a thin line, her lawyer whispering furiously at her side. My son-in-law avoided my eyes. My grandchildren sat slumped, bored, as if this were just another errand before lunch. But this wasn't an errand. This was the reckoning. We filed into the courtroom. The benches creaked. The judge entered, robe sweeping, gavel cracking once against the wood. "Case of Taylor versus Taylor," he announced, his voice carried sharp as the mountain air outside. The arguments began. Their lawyer moved first, his words polished, rehearsed. He painted me as confused, fragile, manipulated by an opportunistic attorney. He gestured to my age, my hospital stay, my weakened condition. I sat still, face calm, heart steady. Let them spin. I'd heard worse. When Harris rose, his voice was iron. "This is not about weakness. This is about survival, Mrs." Taylor was left in an unheated garage in sub-zero temperatures by her own family. If the paramedics had arrived an hour later, she wouldn't be here to defend herself. And now, the very people who nearly let her freeze to death want control of her estate. The judge's eyes flicked toward me. My daughter shifted, cheeks flushing. The first witness called was Frank. His white coat gleamed under the lights as he took the stand. "I was her attending physician," he said firmly. "She was hypothermic, severely. No elderly woman ends up in that state by choice. She was neglected. And if you're asking me if she's competent now, I've known Jo since high school. She's sharper than half the people in this room." A ripple moved through the gallery. My daughter's lips pressed tighter. Then Harris called the neighbor, the one who saw the ambulance lights flashing across the snow, who peeked through her curtains and saw me wheeled out of the garage. "Yes," she testified, voice quivering. "I thought it was strange. Why would anyone put their mother in the garage? I remember thinking, it looked like they wanted to hide her." The judge's gavel struck once. Order. I sat through it all, silent, letting their lies collapse under the weight of truth. Every word was another brick pulled from their wall. When it was finally my turn, Harris asked just one question. "Mrs. Taylor, do you believe your family has your best interests at heart?" The room went still. I lifted my chin. My voice was cold, sharp, deliberate. If they did, I wouldn't have nearly frozen to death while they sipped wine by the fire. The words echoed, and for the first time, my daughter looked down. The judge's ruling came swift, decisive. The guardianship petition is denied. The deed transfer stands. Mrs. Taylor retains full control of her estate. Furthermore, this court finds credible evidence of neglect. Any future claim by the petitioners will be dismissed with prejudice. The gavel struck. Just like that, it was over. My family rose slowly, faces pale, eyes hollow. My daughter tried to speak, but her voice cracked and died in her throat. My son-in-law clenched his fists, veins rising. My grandchildren shuffled behind, confused, angry, ashamed. I stood with Harris, cane steady, shoulders straight. The sunlight from the tall windows spilled across me, and for once, I didn't feel small. That evening, I returned to the Aspen house, my house now. The fire glowed in the hearth, throwing shadows across the polished floor. I walked slowly, cane tapping, until I reached the garage door. I touched the cold handle. A chill ran through me, memory pressing like ice against my chest. The smell of oil, the flicker of the bulb, the sting of frost on my skin. I whispered, "Not again." Then I turned away, leaving the door shut for good. The house was quiet, too quiet. No voices, no laughter, no clinking glasses, just the crackle of fire and the hum of silence. I'd won. The papers said it. The court confirmed it. The deed was mine. But as I stood at the window, watching the snow fall heavy again, I felt something colder than victory. I'd cut them out. Every last one. No heirs, no claims, no second chances. The silence wasn't peace. It was emptiness. I lowered myself into the armchair by the fire, cane resting at my side, papers stacked neatly on the table. The glow of the flames danced against the glass. For the first time, I was free. And for the first time, I was utterly alone. I whispered into the stillness, voice sharp as ever. They buried me in a garage. I buried them in court. Fair trade. The fire popped, sparks rising. Outside, the snow kept falling.